Let me tell you the whole story.
Welcome to my open and honest review of one of the most anticipated movie musical adaptations ever made, Wicked, Part 1. And yes, it's only a Part 1. If you're concerned about spoilers, don't worry. I'll keep it spoiler-free until the last section, where I'll be spilling all the spoilerific details like cameos and noteworthy changes. If you're a fan of the Wicked stage musical, the Wicked book, one of the many adaptations of the original Wizard of Oz tale, or just love a good story with friendship and beautiful music, I can say with no hesitation that this has truly defied all expectations. Full disclosure, I was very nervous about this one. I've seen the musical live, I own the Wicked book, and the Wizard of Oz has been in my life since I was a child, so I had high hopes but very low expectations given most of the movie musicals we've been getting lately. I'm looking at you, mean girls. Like Dune and Dune Part 2 before it, the Part 1 detail was annoyingly left out of most of the marketing for the film, but unlike Dune, it feels like a full and complete story that will leave you satisfied, but hopefully wanting more. For those who don't know or need a refresher, Wicked is a movie adaptation of the massively successful Broadway musical of the same name. The stage production has been a phenomenon ever since it opened in 2003, winning over 100 major awards, including 3 Tonys and a Grammy for Best Musical Show Album. It's estimated that over 60 million people have seen Wicked live, making it one of the longest-running and most beloved Broadway shows ever. Unlike the Barbie movie, you cannot underestimate how popular the brand recognition is going into this film. The marketing machine has been out in full force, from what has seemed to be a never-ending press tour, to the crazy amount of Wicked-themed products, to the strange controversies that have plagued the production. But all that aside, let's not forget it all started with a book. Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, written by Gregory Maguire in 1995. It reimagines the backstory of the Wicked Witch of the West before Dorothy arrived on the scene and gives us a deeper look into the world of Oz. And yes, it's all inspired by L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the original 1900 novel, and of course the iconic 1939 film starring Judy Garland.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
It's important to recognize that the stories don't exactly line up, but you shouldn't expect them to. I've seen questions pop up on social media and discussion boards asking how specific plot points feed into each other from Wicked to Dorothy's story, but please, don't try to think about it too hard. It's not meant to be canon. It's best to think about Gregory Maguire's books as professional fan fiction that plays around in L. Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz world. He even pays homage to the original author by naming the titular character after him. L. Frank Baum, Elphaba. It's a fun Easter egg to notice. This first film revolves around the origins of a little green girl named Elphaba. Being born green, Elphaba is hated by her father and marginalized by everyone around her. But when she gets invited to stay at Shiz University alongside her younger sister to study sorcery, she gets the chance to come into her own power. Literally, as it turns out, she's born with a Carrie-esque power she can't quite control. At Shiz, she finds strength through friendship and a newfound purpose that will lead her to be branded as the Wicked Witch of the West. The musical explores themes of female friendship, discrimination, and governmental corruption, but served up in a very fun and light-hearted way. I was afraid this would be an overbloated CGI mess of a movie with overproduced, auto-tuned music. I couldn't have been more wrong. Now, is it perfect? No, but what piece of media is? Most of the nitpicks I have are minor or don't have anything to do with the movie, since they stem from some of the choices the stage musical made with the overall pacing of the story. I can see some Wicked fans coming after me for this, but I absolutely love the music, and the original Broadway cast recording is on regular rotation. And I can't wait to add the movie album to the mix, so hopefully that redeems me a little bit in your eyes. With that said, before you head out to see it, here are a few other know before you goes. First, do you need to have read the book or have seen the play beforehand? No. Being that Part 1 is mainly a prequel to the classic Wizard of Oz story, the movie does a great job of standing on its own while also offering plenty of nods to those who are familiar with the source material, without seeming like hollow member berries. Whether you've read the book, seen the Broadway musical, or even just know the Wizard of Oz, you'll be able to follow and enjoy the story. I dare say this will even win over non-musical fans, with the only real downside being its 2.5-hour runtime. You might be wondering, is it kid-friendly? Absolutely. But keep in mind that Wicked does explore some mature themes, such as prejudice and betrayal. Some might claim that the themes will be too heavy for younger viewers to grasp, but I disagree. I've seen way more complex themes explored in children's media that far outpace this one. And it's rated PG, so it's generally suitable for family viewing, though younger children might find the runtime a bit tough to sit through. If your kids are comfortable with the 1939 Wizard of Oz movie, they'll likely enjoy Wicked as well. There is one scene that leads to the origins of our green heroine that I was afraid would get a little spicy, but they keep things vague and implied. Something that a lot of Wicked book fans might be a little bummed about. Even though the original Wizard of Oz books are fantastical tales for children, the Wicked books are definitely not, so please keep that in mind if you plan on picking up a copy of the movie-branded Wicked book after seeing the film. The Wicked musical is very much a Disneyfied musical version of Wicked, so you and your child will be in for a rude awakening if you don't know that before reading it. Given that it's only part 1, it expands upon the stage runtime by quite a bit, but concludes in the same spot as the first act with defying gravity, so we can assume that there will be way more added in part 2. Which in my opinion is a good thing, because the latter half of the musical is pretty agreed upon to be the weaker part of the story. Hopefully they'll use the year-long intermission to fix some of the rushed plot points that the second half suffers from, and if they can pull it off, I think it'll go down as being a better, more complete story than the stage version was able to do given its time limitations. For fans of the stage musical, you might be wondering if there are any big changes. Surprisingly, no. It's a pretty faithful adaptation with the exception of some minor changes made to the supporting roles and an extra song featuring some fun cameos for eagle-eyed Broadway fans. And there's no after-credit scene or sneak peek of part 2, so don't bother waiting around for anything extra to happen once the credits roll. Now let's give credit to where credit is due. Directed by John M. Chu, who you might know from Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights, this film has some serious talent behind it. The main cast includes Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, aka the Wicked Witch, and Ariana Grande as Glinda, aka Glinda, aka the Good Witch. These two powerhouse performers bring Elphaba and Glinda to life in a way that's both visually spectacular and deeply emotional. I know a lot of people have been clowning on the actresses for consistently crying in interviews, but their chemistry, especially vocally, really comes through, and they're theater people at their core, so being overly emotional is kind of in their DNA. And I'm so happy this movie avoided one of the cardinal sins of most movie musicals by casting non-Broadway caliber singers in leading roles. Apparently, they shot this film with them singing live, but honestly, I can't tell. Because if you told me this was recorded in studio, I would believe you. It's that good. There's also been a lot of chatter online about whether or not Ariana Grande could pull off the role. And I too was a little doubtful, but man, she nails Glinda. I dare say that she is going to be the standout that most people are going to talk about after seeing the Popular number.
Popular, you're gonna be popular.
Her take on Popular brings such a fun, fresh energy while paying homage to the spirit of Kristen Chenoweth's original Glinda. The way they're able to use the props and camera angles on Popular can only really be done in film, and it's so awesome to watch live, especially the way they use colors, and it's just phenomenal. Not to mention her comedic timing is on point. That neck is working overtime to pull off all the hair flipping. I predict she'll be the standout surprise because no one should go into this film doubting Cynthia's vocal or acting skills. If you've seen her in anything, you should know she can play the misunderstood outsider brilliantly. That Ozdust ballroom scene got me tearing up a bit. And I'm not gonna lie, I hardly ever get that way in movie theaters, but that feeling of being judged and othered is so beautifully captured by her in that scene. I think if there's any scene that will get you, it's that one. And for this movie to work, you have to buy the story of the reluctant roommates turned best friends. And it's very clear that the bond between them has transcended from fiction to reality. So no wonder they're crying all the time.
Oh my gosh. Well,
And yeah, aside from some of the odd makeup choices for Ariana, I can't find any fault in the overall look of the characters. Because I'm sorry, you cannot convince me that she can pull off that shade of blonde hair. But it's something I can overlook. Because the makeup and the costume department pulled out all the stops, and if you enjoy getting into the weeds on things like costume design, I highly encourage you to go check out the video InStyle released with the Wicked costume designer breaking down the leading ladies' dresses. I'll link it down below. Moving on to the supporting cast, it includes Jonathan Bailey of Bridgerton fame as the charming and cheeky Prince Fiyero, Michelle Yeoh as the elegant yet intimidating Madame Morrible, and Jeff Goldblum as the duplicitous Wizard of Oz. But he's really just doing his best Jeff Goldblum, because when Jeff Goldblums, it's always great.
Like that.
Now, Jonathan Bailey's rendition of Dancing Through Life was one of my favorite parts of the film, and I was pleasantly surprised at how they updated it to sound a bit more modern without straight up popifying it, since I personally have always felt like that song is a wee bit dated compared to the rest of the score. He's everything you could have wanted out of a Fiyero, with the small exception that he definitely does not look like he should still be in university, but let's be honest with ourselves, none of them do. From the stunning set designs to the incredible vocal performances, everything feels big, bold, and deeply enchanting. The production design is worth mentioning. It's like they brought the fantastical world of Oz to life with an incredible mix of practical effects and CGI, which thankfully avoids the ugly green screen mess of live action movies like Alice in Wonderland and that dreadful Oz the Great and Powerful movie, which is best to be forgotten about.
No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you.
The only caveat to that is sadly I would have liked a little less CGI in the grand defying gravity finale to keep it a little bit more grounded. The transition into that number is very abrupt and seems out of place with the tone of the big action set piece that precedes it, but I'd be curious to know if others agree. Another small critique is that the CGI animals are good, not great, but it's not anything I was distracted by. And speaking of the animals, Peter Dinklage as the voice of Goat Professor Dr. Dilliman does a great job providing the central conflict at the heart of Elphaba's journey to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, including herself. I dare say the conflict revolving around what is happening to the talking animals of Oz works better in the movie than the stage version because we see the animals in their true form instead of people in costumes. And let's be honest, who doesn't love animals? So Elphaba's drive to advocate for them to get to the bottom of what's happening is a commendable cause that we can all get behind without feeling forced or overly preachy. I can't help notice the similarities of what's happening to the talking animals in Wicked reminds me a lot of what happens in C.S. Lewis's Narnia Chronicles. Like with many classic tales, both Wicked and Narnia share a central theme of exploring the complexities of good and evil, the perception of power, who's allowed to wield it, how fascistic regimes use fear to hold on to such power, and the little guys who get caught up in the crosshairs. But it's done in a way that is very palatable, unlike the Barbie movie with its in-your-face messaging. This is way more reminiscent of the way classic stories weave messaging into the story in an organic way that you can choose to see and go deeper with, or you can just enjoy the visuals and the music without having to think too hard about it. So it's the best of both worlds. Overall, Wicked Part 1 had some big shoes to fill, but I can confidently say I don't believe it could have been done any better. Once the word gets out, the cast album is released, and clips start circulating online, I have no doubt this will smash all box office predictions. Fans of the musical are going to find so much to love here, and I think it'll win over plenty of new fans too, even the non-musical ones. But can it survive the year before the second half is released? We'll have to see. This is honestly one of the best movie musical adaptations I've ever seen, but it all is riding on how the second part does. So it's an incomplete story, and we will have to wait a year-long intermission to see how it ends. Now, jumping into some spoilers and random ramblings I got going on up in my brain, I'm sure a lot of people want to know what are the noteworthy cameos. The two standout ones that you will notice right away are going to appear when Elphaba and Glinda transition to the Emerald City, and we get a brand new number featuring Idina Menzel and Christian Chenoweth in a delightful number that is hilarious. The new song does not feel forced in. It doesn't feel different. It's hilarious. You see Christian Chenoweth playing around with Ariana Grande, putting her hand over her mouth and stuff like that. It's very playful. They look great, and I think it just adds a lot. And I'm sure there were other cameos that I missed that I would have to go back to. The addition of characters that like Bo and Yang are playing, Glinda's little henchmen that are her support team. I liked it, but it's unnecessary. They have some funny little quips that they get in and they add to some scenes, but they are ultimately kind of unnecessary. And so is Bach and Nessa, but Bach and Nessa are kind of unnecessary in the overall story as well. They have more to play in the second part, but most fans of the musical are probably going to agree that they are two of the least fleshed out characters, and Nessa overall just feels so detached from Elphaba. She doesn't help her in any way. She is very clearly ashamed of her sister. During the Ozdas ballroom scene, she doesn't help out her sister when everyone is laughing at her and ridiculing her, and it's really sad to see. She's kind of a very unsympathetic character, which I guess just leads into more about her transition in the second half to the Wicked Witch of the East. So we'll have to see how they flesh that out and what they add, because it never truly made sense, her turn to the dark side, so to speak. And the same thing for all the characters. The second half of the musical, with trying to fit in the threads that will lead to Dorothy's journey, you know, the Fiero turning into the Scarecrow, and then you have Bach turning into the Tin Man, and then you have the little lion cub that Fiero and Elphaba set free, turning into the Cowardly Lion that will join Dorothy. It all didn't seem to really make sense, but I have a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to add a lot, because this first movie is 2.5 hours. That is just shy of the overall runtime of the stage musical, so they have a whole 2 hours to work with for the second part that they can add, and they can really flesh out and bring to life a complete story that the stage musical doesn't have time to do. And this might be kind of a controversial opinion, but Elphaba, in having her amazing powers that she doesn't know the origins of. I mean, obviously her mother cheated on her father. We see that in the beginning of the movie. We see them dancing around. She's very loosey-goosey. She's getting it on. She's drinking the green potion. And then obviously Elphaba pops out green. We don't know more of that. So it'd be interesting how much they will add to the lore of why she is green and what exactly was that green potion, as well as what does it all mean for her? Because she is so utterly gifted, which is not a thing that happens in the book. She's not that gifted. And her being so overpowered in the musical does kind of make her a little bit of a Mary Sue, but she's a sympathetic one. She does have minor flaws, being that she is overly emotional to the point where her powers kick in. And she's a great advocate. She becomes an animal activist. She obviously becomes railroaded. She's the scapegoat for the horrible wizard who wants to use her power to prop himself up, as well as Madame Morrible, who turns on both her and Glinda. And what will happen with Glinda? She's probably the most fleshed out character when it comes to a character arc. She goes from this snarky, spoiled brat, very reminiscent of Elle Woods in Legally Blonde, but then becomes a lot more sympathetic along the way. What will her turn be like? You know, we see that she's very conflicted with having to say goodbye to Elphaba in the end, even though they're totally cool with each other going separate ways, which has always been a little weird in my mind, but totally acceptable. You know, the power of female friendship, the power of understanding that you both have your own agency and that you cannot stick with each other in this moment, but you have to give each other grace and hopefully you'll meet again. But in the beginning, when she is talking poorly about Elphaba, she's doing so under duress, right? She has to hide the fact that she did care deeply for her friend. And she is conflicted about seeing people celebrating the death of the Wicked Witch of the West and what was her part in that. So it really gets to you, and I just want to see more in that additional 2 hours that they're going to put in the second part. And then we have a character like Fiero, the love interest, the love triangle between Glinda, him, and Elphaba. Will that be fleshed out a little bit more? You know, his sticking with Glinda, but also pining for Elphaba. How will they flesh out that romance a little bit more to make it feel fuller, to make it feel truly like these two are going to run away with each other in the end? Because the big difference between Wicked, the musical, and Wicked, the book, as well as the story of The Wizard of Oz with Dorothy, is that Dorothy does not kill Elphaba in the end. She does not get melted by the water. It's a big fake out. She fakes her own death and then runs away with Fiyero. Are they going to add to it? Are we going to see what their journey is going to be like after they leave Oz? Because obviously the movie opens up showing us the melted pile of water. We all know that's how the story will eventually end, but not exactly how we understand it to have ended, because all three stories between Wicked the musical, Wicked the book, and then The Wizard of Oz all has the Wicked Witch of the West meeting her end in a slightly different way, and her future is very different, being that in some versions she's dead and then other versions she's alive. So what will that lead to? But that wraps it up for this one. Are you excited as I was to see Wicked Part 1? And if you've already seen it, what did you think? Did you love a particular song, a character, or maybe you're just curious to see how they're going to pull off Part 2? If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like to help my channel grow, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more upcoming reviews and videos analyzing tales from the page, stage, and screen that we all love. Thanks for watching, and stay cultured!